It's episode 500.
500 episodes of the
500.
Root Causes podcast.
It is crazy. So when you and I recorded episode 250, we said we'll be back at episode 500 for another. I think what we said was every 250 episodes you're allowed to talk about your podcast for one episode, one every 250. This is it. This is our one.
So humor us, folks. We're going to talk about the inside baseball of the podcast itself.
Yeah, talk about the podcast itself. So episode 500. So I guess first of all, you know, in a lot of ways, I think this podcast has changed and evolved, but I think the core of it is not. Right?
Let's go right back to the beginning, Tim, where I remember you and I were in New Jersey and we were talking. We were just having a great conversation. Yeah. And I felt if we were to just hit the record button, some people would be interested in hearing us.
I think you said to me, literally, like, I wish we had a recorder here and we had a record button. And I said, well, I think we could do that.
And so we did.
Yeah.
500 times.
Yeah, 500 times.
And I guess the point is this. Everything has to evolve. And we have to some degree. You might see us do short episodes, 60 seconds of just some chat.
We're on video now. That's a big one.
We're on video now in glorious video.
As opposed to me in my basement.
Hey, we've got to start somewhere. And I think, though, that the one thing that you will expect that to never change in this podcast is the formula that I think has made it work and get us an audience. Thank you so much, audience, for being there. And that is two guys, gray beards from the industry, just having a conversation.
Yeah.
You might see us do all kinds of formats, but that format will always be there.
Yeah, I think that's a big one, is just, you know, a couple things we sort of decided, you know, a priori, without any metrics or outside feedback, but I think proved we still believe is, number one, I think, is make the show I would want to listen to and count on the fact that I'm not the only human in the world who would want to listen to it, right? And what we felt at the time was that nobody was doing a regular deep dive conversation about this subject matter, even though this is subject matter that affects every digital system in the world and every person who works with digital systems in the world. And in that sense, you know, there would be value in just getting that out there. And I think that's true. I think another thing that we decided in the beginning was that we were going to come into this with our own viewpoints. We were not going to read a script. Instead, we were going to talk about what we believed. And we were going to talk about what we believed even when we didn't agree.
Of course.
I think we found that we usually agree, but not always. And all that stuff, I feel, is still there as the DNA of this show.
It 100% is.
Right?
It is absolutely the DNA of the show. And it seems to have worked because of the fact that the audience, Tim, grew far more than I thought we'd ever have.
I thought it was going to be us and our moms. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the other really great point is I think that the audience is there, which makes it worthwhile to do. Yeah. And there's a hunger for information that we're talking about.
We all know that. I mean, first of all, we see the stats, we know that. But also we know that just because I don't go to a trade show or a conference where I don't meet somebody who listens to the show.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I have told some of these anecdotes. I think you just had one at the conference you were just at, right? So remind us of that one.
Oh, I was sitting at a table with a very old and distinguished colleague of mine, and some other people were at the table. And the podcast happened to come up just naturally in conversation. And it surprisingly wasn't me bringing it up.
Right.
And somebody had brought up my name and didn't realize that they were sitting right beside me.
Right.
And I introduced myself, and it was a big shock
Yeah.
to that person. And it's like, I'm just,
Yeah, it's great, right? Because that's where it's not you. You're not out shilling it, right? Yeah, it's not like you're telling people.
I'm so glad that people that are absolutely 100% like the conference I was at was the cryptographic module conference. I mean, you'd expect people there who might have come across our podcast,
Right.
so not surprising. However, there are folks from all over general cybersecurity. There are folks that I've been spoken to that are from, my goodness, people from all over the place, academics,
Yeah.
and they listen, and they're very interested in topics that aren't even adjacent to them. The public trust topic that we just covered a minute ago, right? That's of interest to people because it does affect computing systems.
Yeah.
And Tim, I think that there's a little bit of interesting effect we may have had on other reporting of technology because our topic was never covered well before or at all.
Yeah.
Tim, just the other day I heard another very large podcast talking about MPIC,
Right.
which couldn't be more weedsy. And you said it best. It's a topic that really it shouldn't affect the consumers of the technology at all.
Right,
This
right.
is truly the
There's-
most
there's
inside of inside.
No decision that the CIO or the sysadmin has to make.
Right.
Right.
And yet,
Yes.
not only interest in the topic, but interest on the most popular large security podcast in the land. And so there we are, Tim.
There we are. Yeah. So I think we have talked some about how it's evolving. We are on video. I think we're going to try to what I want to say, salt it with some more bite-sized stuff. You said it well, which is we're people's commute buddy, or we're people's workout buddy, and that's great. But making something that's kind of snackable that somebody can listen to in 5 minutes is something we're going to work on and see what we can do with that.
If I can be blamed for anything, it's definitely burying the lead on certain types of topics where we're having a natural conversation. And my natural conversation is to do a build-up and then talk about it.
Sometimes there's some preamble that needs to be there, or you don't understand
That's right.
the comment, right? I say, well, let me explain some background, and now I can tell you the comment, and you'll understand what it is.
I think what we'll end up doing for some episodes is they're going to be 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And we're going to cover the absolute most important piece of information right away, and we're going to leave it.
Yep.
And so therefore,
It's not going to be easy for us.
it's not easy for us, and it's not part of our natural conversation style. However, I think the way people want to consume information is extremely information dense. And so for those of you who were your commute buddy, we're going to continue to be that.
Yeah.
On the other hand, for those of you who perhaps you're a young developer, you're a student, you're somebody in academia, you're somebody who's in the adjacent space to us who wants to learn about topics within our area. We do a lot of what is episodes.
What is episodes.
And those what is episodes should be 5 minutes. And you're going to see more of those.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And then another thing I think we've evolved is we do have a regular, infrequent, but regular pattern of guests. And one of the things that you and I have explicitly agreed on and shook hands on is we are going to have the best of the best in terms of guests. The quality of the guests we have are people who, in their area of expertise, the thing that they're on the episode to talk about, honestly are like the best person in the world.
Yes.
And I think I'm just so mind blown at the quality of the guests that we've been able to get. And I'm committed to continuing having guests at that level of expertise and only at that level of expertise. And I think that's important.
Tim, I reached out recently to a couple of our previous guests who are the best in the world at what they do. And there wasn't even a conversation. It was just yes, and that we're on the calendar.
Yep.
It's like, wow.
Yep. I mean, and this is funny. So this is one of the other things you talk about, just, the popularity, which certainly we didn't know was going to happen. Not a week goes by, and usually it's multiple times a week, that I'm getting pitched by some PR professional that is trying to get their executive on the podcast, right? And we don't say yes to any of them because they're not that focused expert. It's just somebody who's out there trying to get some attention. And there's nothing wrong with people trying to get attention, but some corporate lawyer who wants to talk about IP issues, why would you be on my podcast? So no, but we're getting these pitches all the time.
Not surprising.
Right.
But that's a good point for this audience to understand is we get a lot of those requests, but we're going to stick to those really high quality guests.
Yeah. I mean, if someone's here, there's a reason.
Exactly.
Right. And if it's a guest, when we have a guest episode, we always say, I'm so excited I have a guest episode. And it's because I'm not excited about having a guest episode. They're actually much more difficult to do. I'm excited about the guest to the point where I'm willing to go through the extra difficulty in order to make that episode because of the guest, right? That's what I'm excited about.
I would say this, if at the beginning of the episode, Tim or I announces we've got a guest, I guarantee I've got my notebook out, and you should too.
Yeah.
Because typically the things that are going to be spoken about, you won't hear anywhere else, and they're fundamentally important to the entire industry.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're evolving, but I think mostly we're just keeping on. Like, I think it's mostly about just continue to do the thing that feels right, seems to work, and is getting the positive response from the people we want to talk to.
Absolutely. So here is the one impassioned plea I'm going to make on this particular episode, which is you've all known us to have audio episodes once a week, twice a week, sometimes a little more. And you're getting those from SoundCloud or wherever you get your audio podcast. That's great.
Right.
And that's where probably the majority of our listeners are right now. I still bump into people who don't know that we do video podcasts, which are, we have audio and video. In fact, every one of our podcasts now is essentially a video podcast, which happens to have an audio companion. Mm-hmm. And so for those of you who want to check us out in video, I think it adds an element to our discussions. Watching people talk rather than just hearing them is a thing. And I realize for those of you who are commuting, hey, audio is perfect.
Right.
But for everybody else, please check out our video episodes.
How do they find us?
They will find us on the Root Causes Podcast channel on YouTube. That's the easiest way to find us.
Go to YouTube, search for Root Causes Podcast. There we are.
Shorts will soon also be on YouTube.
Yep.
And there is right now an Instagram channel that will also be the Root Causes Podcast on Instagram that will be showing the shorts.
Great. All right. So, we're evolving, and also we're sticking to the knitting. I think the evolution is about, I guess the other evolution that we should mention is that we're making more episodes. One of the things that we've come to understand is that I don't know if there is increasingly more to talk about, though I feel there is, or just we're being better at recognizing what there is to talk about, but whatever, you and I just have more we want to say than we did 4 years ago.
God, that is so true.
And so we're just making more episodes just simply and airing more episodes simply because otherwise we can't get through the material we want to cover.
I've never seen more going on in the public space than ever.
Yeah.
I mean, last year was all about the Bugzilla bloodbath, and now the shortening lifespans, MPEC, and everything else going on in the public world.
Right.
And then, my goodness, I think we're going to blow up in the private world in 2025, 2026. And PQC alone,
PQC
Tim,
alone
we could have a
own
side podcast
channel.
just of that.
Absolutely. There's so much. When you think about what we're saying about PQC back in 2021 and just the rate and frequency of the news, stuff that we absolutely would have covered in its own episode in 2021, now we just can't get to because there's more important things to talk about in the world of PQC. So yeah, I think the amount of news and important discussion in the space is heating up. Our response to that has been to basically try to produce more material.
I'm going to make a point off of that one, Tim, which is I want to express my greatest frustration with this podcast, which happens to be exactly what you just said. There are things that you and I sometimes record a month in advance just so we can have inventory to make sure people have episodes.
I know.
And
by the time we air it, it's a month old, and sometimes someone else has talked about it, and you get irritated. You're like,
I know. So therefore, it's like there's just such a richness of stuff that's not necessarily. It doesn't have to. We're not a news reporting organization. You've said that many times. So that's fair to have something in the can waiting. On the other hand, some of this stuff is not what I would call truly, evergreen, because it's like other people have covered it, even though we covered it first and better, quite often.
Yeah. So agreed on that. So the increasing cadence does at least mitigate that problem a little. And that's been a function that's been organic, right? When we first started, I think we sort of said, gee, I wonder if we can get one done a week. Is that too much? Gulp. And then it's never a week where we only are one, and most weeks we are three. I mean, even if it's Thanksgiving or Christmas, you're still going to see two, right? And that's just because otherwise it's going to stack up. We've just got to get it out there.
I want to address those of you who use the Root Causes podcast as a learning resource. Mm-hmm. And for those of you also who can't keep up with listening to 3 episodes in a week. There are some people who just can't because there's, I would say that the one thing we have missing, Tim, is a lot of podcasts will have like a wiki page of some kind. Yeah. And that would quickly allow you to search on topics and go, oh yeah, that was 390 whatever. Right. And I think that we need that. We are in the middle of working on that.
We do. Here's the challenge on this, and this is, again, a little bit of a, inside the Komodo sausage being made kind of comment, which is this is still ultimately your and my project. We, just like in the beginning, we conceive, record, edit, and publish entirely ourselves. And so it's easy to sit and say, gee, it would be nice if we have such and such. There's no staffer to go do that.
It's Tim and I.
Right. And so, why don't we have a wiki page? We have day jobs, and nobody has managed to allocate the time to make a wiki page. That's the reason, right? And that will continue to be a way that we're very different from somebody who is commercially podcasting as a career, and that's how they make their money. Because those people have nothing to do all week long but things like that. And we have to do this efficiently. And we've had a big focus on efficiency, and I think we're going to keep having a big focus on efficiency. So that's sort of that's the downside for you, the consumer, is we're not investing the time that a professional podcasting team would be investing. The upside for you as a consumer is we have access to content and knowledge because we have day jobs that a normal self-appointed tech podcaster doesn't have. And that absolutely feeds into our topics and our discussion of the topics. And that's, again, going all the way back to 6 years ago. That was one of the things that you and I identified as a mission statement for the podcast, was for it to be the channel for that in-industry perspective that we have.
We had a conversation even just this morning, having a little bit of breakfast together, talking about what kind of became the default media for this topic, but we're not the media. We are industry.
Yeah.
And that's an important point.
And we have to be industry. Like if we're not industry, if you and I said, that's it, hanging up my own shingle, I'm going to be a professional podcaster. I think there's a lot of stuff we could do better because we'd have more focus on it. But I think there's a way it would get worse, right? Because we wouldn't be coming from that perspective of sleeves up, dirty fingernails, working. That is part of, again, what we've identified as the mission for this channel.
We're a content-driven podcast, 100%.
Yeah. All right, so see you again in episode 750.
I'm looking forward to it, Tim.
All right, thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
This has been Rukaza's.